to Standing in the Sunlight with Cynthia Rose. We are all on an ever-unfolding unique journey. Join Cynthia Rose as she begins her unique perspective to all that is meaningful. Topics and personalities that support your path, bringing inspiration and passion and heart-centered ways to live a more fulfilling life. A down-to-earth and uplifting sharing of what it means to be spiritual, creative, and living life to the fullest by standing in the sunlight. Born an intuitive medium, Cynthia Rose is also an ordained minister, singer, astrologer, educator, and writer. She has studied the intuitive and healing arts for over 40 years. Rise up and stand in your sunlight now with Cynthia Rose.
Hello there. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are out in internet land. I'm so glad to have you joining us. I'm Cynthia Rose McCaw, your host, and today I'm very excited to be bringing in a guest that goes back many, many years. I think without this man, you wouldn't have me at cynthiarosemedium.com or Cynthia Rose Music or Cynthia Rose Facebook. I was just a young teen when I discovered Bob Trask, and I'm really excited to bring on this wonderful human being who I have so much respect for. He is minister in Bellingham Unity Church. He's an author, singer, boater. Oh my gosh, there's so many things. Writer. We're going to talk about all the things he's done, and I'm thrilled. Let me see. Are you there, Bob?
I am here. Thank you for having me, Cynthia Rose.
I'm so excited to have you. I just thought I would start with just now you're a minister at is it Unity of Bellingham?
It is, yes.
Yes. But you're much more than just that. I want to just take the listeners back a little bit. We're talking today about aspects of forgiveness, and I was just a young teen. And I think I took your course in Eris in Bellingham, but first you came and did a little talk in Vancouver, BC, which would change my life. I was very intuitive, very empathic. I felt what everybody was feeling, and it was personal because I didn't know how to not make it personal. So at that point, I don't know that forgiveness was something I wanted, but I didn't know how because I just felt everything in the room. And you came and gave a talk, and I have to say I was terrified about doing that. My parents thought I was going off to join a cult. and it was a really big step. I was going to go take this 5-day course, and it changed my life. It was, and I could actually remember saying something to you about feeling what my father was feeling and feeling what I was feeling and feeling mixed up. And you were like, it's okay to love your father the way he is, and it's okay to be who you are. And, you know, those are simple words, but it was something I needed to hear, and I watched you transform people's lives. But we had to do the work for sure.
Yes, absolutely. We always have to do the work. I mean, we can get some guidance by somebody who's been over the trail, but we have to walk the trail, don't we?
Yes. And at the time, you know, I came out of that realizing, oh, I have the power to create the life I want. And it was kind of perfect for me in a way that it was in Bellingham and I would go back to Vancouver. And at the time, you know, what's commonplace nowadays is that we create our reality with our thoughts and that we're responsible for how we show up in life. But what I noticed when I had come back, and we're going back into the 80s, what I noticed is that, you know, people didn't seem to know this. In fact, they didn't even want me to tell them.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was hard. Yeah.
Yeah, we all have that problem. You know, it's interesting when we start moving along the path of enlightenment it seems to me that we begin to realize truth on a much, much deeper level. And then we turn to the people around us and say, I want to tell you what I've just discovered. It can change your life. And they shun us. And it's so frustrating, but we have to realize, I guess, that everyone has their own time. And if it's not their time, then it's just not their time.
Yeah. Well, and it was a big lesson for me in learning to love everybody where they were.
Good. Good for you.
And a good friend of mine said to me back then, it's okay to have an ego, Cynthia, but you don't need to be one.
How true, how true.
Yeah, I've just come out of the forest and I found this great meadow, and you all need to be here because it's the best thing since sliced bread. And that's where I was way back then. But as we talk about forgiveness today, I was sitting this morning and pondering one of the things that we were going to talk about. Can we really talk about forgiveness without talking about compassion?
Yeah. The forgiveness has been a big thing in my life for a lot of years. I'm in my 70s now, and when I was on my 15th birthday, I accidentally shot and killed my brother. And for at least the next 30 years, I thought almost weekly, maybe more than weekly, about Gary laying in his grave and me skipping around through the world doing my thing, dating and having fun, going fishing and diving and traveling. And Gary was in his grave because of something I did. And you can't unkill someone. I mean, if I steal your money, I can give you your money back, but there's no way to undo that. And it wasn't for many, many years. And I went to a lot of therapists and counselors, and they all had these little kind of nicey things that they say, well, these things happen and you need to just get over it and all that, baloney. And what I finally came to realize, and it was a great realization for me, is that forgiveness is not making it okay or tolerating it or coping with it. For true forgiveness is saying, if I could go back right now and change it, I would not. Because true forgiveness is acceptance. And there's no way to undo a thing that's happened. It happened. It happened. And it's there, and it's going to be there. And for me to go to labor through my life wishing that it were different and living in a fantasy of how it could have been or should have been or would have been if only, rather than saying, no, it is the way it is. And if it is the way it is, then it is the way. And if it is the way, then it is spiritually perfect. And I need to accept it and not want to change it, but to say, that's the building block of the reality I'm now living in. Let me move forward. And Cynthia Rose, when I did that, Gary and I, for the first time, became close again. Because as long as I was holding that event, and a lot of other events, a lot of other things that I did that were regrettable, as long as I held Gary or any of those other events in abeyance or held them at arm's length or pretended that it shouldn't have been, couldn't have been, wouldn't have been, if only, then what I'm doing is living in a fantasy world, and I'm not able to access the beauty of that situation, the joy of that situation, the building blocks of wisdom that situation can offer me. And after I finally came to terms with that, then I began to realize that Gary and I both did that. I didn't do it. He did it as well. I was shooting at something, and he was laying down drinking from a creek, and he stood up in front of my gun. So I began to see that we danced together in that. And I think that those of us who've been married and maybe our husband or wife cheated on us, and maybe that ended in divorce or whatever, or somebody betrayed us or stole our money or killed a friend of ours or whatever they did. Those things are what is. Those are the truth of the world today. Those are the building blocks. If we use them as building blocks, those are the building blocks of the reality that we have, and they're filled with wisdom and power if we're willing to accept them. And I think that's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness, complete, total, unconditional acceptance of what is.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and I can't imagine going through what you went through in that. And there are times that I have people in my office that I haven't walked the wisdom that they're gaining from their life. Mine has been mine, and theirs is theirs. But I try to remind them that you're gaining a wisdom I don't have, because we all have. I believe we all have that. Because we're all connected to a source, we all have that ability to grow. And if we just honor that inner self, that higher self, if we just stay in some kind of connection.
You know, you're a great teacher and a great proselytizer of intuition, of spiritual awareness and spiritual knowing. And I really admire that about you. But the way intuition is so important, and the way is through an all-knowing, intuitive power of the soul. To discover any truth, we have to turn our consciousness inward to the soul, and that omniscience is one with Holy Spirit, with Great Spirit, with God, in whatever form we see God. And when we are in forgiveness, when we're totally in acceptance, then the clouds go out of our sky, the blocks go out of our intuitive capability, and then we're able to see, then we're able to know, then we're truly on the path of enlightenment, which is enlightenment itself.
And I agree, but one of the things I find, I mean, it makes me laugh now, but, you know, your course that I took way back when, that, you know, one of the first tenets was acceptance. And, you know, the framework that you had, you know, you said, well, this will change your life, but your real work is when you leave this course. And, you know, years later, I had a horrific car accident, and I remember, you know, I couldn't really move, and I remember sitting there going, what have I got in my toolbox? Well, I'm not a singer right now. I don't feel like much of a mother right now. I'm not much of a provider, right? I was just stuck. I couldn't go and exercise to get some steam off. There was nothing I could do. I was just stuck. And I went back to those principles of, you know, accepting the way things are, accepting what had happened. And the funny thing is, as I'm upset that somebody carelessly drove into me, which carelessly caused this horrific accident, and everyone's saying, oh, but you're here still. I'm going, yeah, but I'm not here really. And I mean, I went down to these depths of despair where I tried to get both my sisters to agree to take my son if something happened to me, because I was thinking of finding a way out. And, you know, one kept saying, oh, well, no, he really should go. No, she should take him. No, you talk to her. And they just kept and they didn't know what they were doing. I was being very sly about it. I said, I just want to make sure, since I've had this. But neither of them would agree to take him. Well, in that case, I had made a commitment to raise him. So I thought, well, I'm stuck here. So that's easy out. I can't do that, which, you know, thank goodness for that. I was that mixed up, and I went back to those tenets, the framework. And even though everybody's saying, oh, okay, this has happened, you're responsible, there was a fine line between how do I forgive myself for ending up in this situation? And that was much harder than forgiving anybody else. It's like I had two standards.
Yeah. Boy, I really hear you. Martin Luther King said not too long before he died, I've been to the mountaintop, and I've learned through my life that those people like you who have had that kind of incredibly traumatic, life-changing, devastating event, if they can just hang on, and if they can just, as you say, have a toolbox that they can go to and use, what happens is that they come out of that so much stronger and wiser. And I think that the true leaders of the world are those people who, as Martin Luther King said, have been to the mountaintop. And certainly, Cynthia Rose, you've been to the mountaintop. You've been there. And because of the love of your son, you had the ability and the strength and the determination to come through it. And as a result of that, now looking back, and those listeners who are listening, all of you, each of you can relate to what Cynthia Rose is saying, because you too have been to the mountaintop. You've been betrayed, you've been lied to, you've been hurt, you've been alone, you've been lonely, and no one knows the trouble that you've seen or the pain that you've been through. No one knows that but you. No one can understand that but you. But as you grow through that, if you keep your eyes on the prize, on the light, then what happens is that you become more powerful and more creative and more joyful. There's much more joy in life. Cynthia Rose, isn't it true that now your life is much more joyful than it was before that accident?
I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful. And we'll talk more about that. We're getting cued for a break. So
Okay.
Hang on, everyone. Grab a drink of water and come back and join us.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
And we were just, that was a perfect break time. We were just at the place, I'm with Bob Trask, and we were talking about big traumatic changes that many go through, and I am so grateful for everything that has happened to me, and especially for that life change, that accident, because there is so much that I got from that. As I started out at the beginning, Bob, a level of compassion grew within me. And there was a level of compassion. It was things I didn't see before that I learned to see. Just like, for example, when somebody sits down in front of me, or even when it's on the phone, I'll get a sense of the level of, I've had people sit down, or there's an incredible amount of physical pain in you, and I can feel it intuitively. And, I didn't even know it existed before then. I really didn't. I was just in a survival mode, trying to develop my, my mind, my abilities to be a good person, but I did not have the level of compassion that grew within me, and the spiritual path that I was put on. I mean, there's many ways to do it, but it seems that brings me back to that. It comes back to, we must love ourselves first, and forgiveness and compassion has to be with ourselves first. And sometimes we find that by maybe giving it to someone else, but maybe we could talk about that dance of in helping others versus giving to ourselves, because I think there's a lot of people trying to understand that.
One of the things that has been a revelation to me, and I hope that nobody feels insulted at all by what I'm about to say, but I no longer see God as the guy in the sky, but rather as Great Spirit, as the Native Americans and other Aboriginals around the world term that great energy, that great intelligent energy that's around us, that is the Creator. To come into focus and be really one with that energy, to become one with God, however I see God, to become one with that, I need to surrender and accept, as I said earlier, and to know that I am an incarnation of, an expression of that creative power, of that creative intelligence. So one of the ways, a metaphor that I have gotten from a book, The Way of Mastery, that I think is such an apt metaphor, is that I'm a wave on the sea, and the sea is God. And I'm a wave. I'm here temporarily. And I stand up and I shine, and I have all these facets that catch the light and shine out from me. And if I'm in forgiveness and acceptance, those facets are not occluded, and they would be occluded if in fact I'm not in forgiveness. But if I'm in complete forgiveness and acceptance of what is, then and if I know that I am an eternal spiritual being, and temporarily this wave, temporarily in this body as an expression of God, and that I will relax back into the sea and become one with the entire sea at a certain position, at a certain time, and then again rise up as another wave. And if I see that as a dance of joy and a dance of light, and if I see that as an opportunity for me to shine out love, which is actually God, grace, forgiveness, understanding. And then when I do what you do so well, Cynthia Rose, which is listen, you do that better than most people I know, to be able to really not only listen, but really hear what someone's saying. Then what happens is that other wave on the ocean that's just over there a little ways from me relates to me, and I to that wave, and my experience of reality just doubles. And the more of those people I can learn to listen to and see and really know, the more my experience of reality doubles and triples and quadruples. And then I become more and more one with the sea, whereas Jesus said, that he was one with the Father, that I become one with all of that. And that, of course, is also what Buddha would talk about. And it's enlightenment, because enlightenment is not a goal, a place we get to. Enlightenment is a path, and we are either on that path or we're not. And when we're on that path, then some miraculous things happen. Great souls who reveal to mankind deep spiritual truths, they get their knowledge, they get that wisdom through a direct attunement with truth, with the vibrations of truth, with the vibrations of who we think of as God. And so in the ether around us, in the space around us, and that space, incidentally, is not empty space. Scientists have proven what mystics have known for centuries, and that's that the space around us is not empty. If we think of a fish in the ocean and we say, well, that fish swimming along in the ocean, if you were to ask him or her, what's water, they wouldn't know. It's so constant that they wouldn't know what it is. And we're the same way. We move through this place that we think of as space, but it isn't space, it's grace. It's filled with the wisdom and the power of Creator. And if we can get our egos out of the way, and as you so eloquently said, not just get rid of our egos, but to not be our egos, if we can just get them out of the way and get to a deeper understanding of love. And love is the key. Love is the answer. Love is how I get there. If I can do that and get myself out of the way and my regrets and my incriminations and my criticisms of other people, get all of that out of the way and just be love, then what happens is that out of that ether comes to me wisdom and information and music. If I'm a composer, or stories if I'm a writer, or inventions if I'm an inventor, all of that comes to me with great joy and great alacrity, great clarity. If I'm able to just do that, if I'm able to just be the love I seek, and get my ego out of the way and be present in the world. What do you think?
Absolutely. That's beautifully said. And I loved when you started with the ocean because, I'm a water girl too. So, but no, that is so true. And it occurs to me thinking about how we're always a part of this divine and how our minds will take us into body, mind, spirit, and yet there is no separation. Our minds are always trying to understand it, but the mind will never understand it.
No,
that's not
never.
Where the understanding comes from. It comes from the realization and the knowing that we are one always.
And one of the things that we do in our incarnation is as you just said, we try to understand. And understanding and realizing are totally different.
How so?
Realization is seeing what is without having to try to figure out the elements of what makes it so. It's just seeing what is and letting it come to me in a deeper way. If I see a tree, I say, okay, I'm looking at the tree. It's got a trunk, it's got some really interesting branches, it's got some beautiful soft spring leaves on it, it's up there against the blue sky. I see that. And so I understand it. I understand that tree. But do I realize it? Do I feel it? Do I love it? Do I open up my heart to it and know that it's another creation, another living being? And then I begin to see the movement of the leaves, and I begin to feel the melody of the tree, and I begin to realize it. And it doesn't have anything to do with my understanding that the cambium layer is just beneath the bark and that the heartwood this and that. It's not understanding any of that. It's any more than me understanding your body, Cynthia Rose, or how you're put together, but to feel your spirit, to realize who you are as an eternal being. That's the difference.
And, I have to say, I love meeting people that have crossed over to the other side because they don't have an ego. So I get to meet the best of them. And It's funny how the tapestry of life, but I mean, I lost a lot of people young. And I didn't have the kind of family makeup that to someone else might seem normal. So I didn't have the light. So when they share things with me, I think, oh, that's cool, or if I get to meet somebody's grandparents and hear like what they did, I just didn't have that. So it's like having a gift of meeting all this loving best energy of everyone. And it sustains me because I realize when we're here, it's the same. It's just that people forget. They forget that we are all one, and I'm having this experience, Cynthia Rose, and you're having this experience as Bob, and we're all in this one dance. And I remind myself regularly that while I may not see with my mind how it is all going, I know it is all moving together, even though I may not see it in my mind.
Yes. That great desiderata that came out of the 60s, you are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. I talked earlier today to a lady, interestingly enough, who was in that program you were in back in the early 80s, and she's now very close to death. She has a kind of a strange disease. It's kind of a cross between Lou Gehrig's disease and some other neurological debilitating diseases. So it's difficult for her to talk, very increasingly difficult for her to swallow, and she knows now that she just has a few weeks left to live. And we talked for a while, and we agreed that because she had done her work earlier in life, because she had sorted out her resentments and her darknesses and come to be one with what is, that this is an easier passage. She said, if I hadn't done that work, if I hadn't prepared myself, I don't think I could do this. I don't think I could go through this. But I now know that all is well, that all is good, all is God, all is love. So I think that
it's so important.
For me, if I hadn't done my work, I don't know how I could face the craziness of life as it is around me now.
Absolutely. It's so important. And I remember being about 12 years old and saying, I do not want to pass from this world with regret. That was my commitment. I will not carry regret. And
got it. 12 years old. That's great.
I can remember Desiderata. My mom used to read that to me every morning.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that is beautiful. You bring that up. She would read that. We played the record. We had it on the wall. It reminded me of her. Anytime I would go through difficulty, she would read something from it. My mom was a very spiritual person, but she wasn't able to move past some of her pain for the world, as you say. She felt all this pain for the world, and I thought, well, I don't mind helping people, like she was a reader too, but I'm not going to do that. And I see that with some of the older readers. They didn't quite know how to process that oneness, even though they might tap in. They found that part heavy, and I thought, well, I don't want to do that. So, but I absolutely feel like if I were to go tomorrow, I'm in a good place. And when I have people come through and they say, there are people that come through and say, I didn't work on this, I wasn't aware of this. And there's a need to express, of something that they were not clear with. And you can feel the healing that goes on between their loved one and them as they're talking, because they're eternal, they're still talking, and the other one is now there listening. But there's such a great need to clear it. And I always say it's easier to do it before we leave here. Not that we can't there, but, we're okay where we're going. It's just, we leave behind people that maybe we need to say something to, and they don't quite realize yet that they can tune in. You know, I hope one day we won't have mediums, that people will just be aware that their loved ones are there all the time with them. And to me, that's where I think we need to be headed. But until then, you know.
Until then, exactly. You know, one of the things that occurred to me this morning, I did a little online video this morning, and I was talking about loneliness, and I became aware as I was getting ready for that there are millions, not thousands, but millions of people in the world who are lonely, and that loneliness eats into them, and it not only affects their minds and their emotions, but it affects their body. It ages them prematurely, and why that is so not right is because loneliness in that realm is actually a disease, and it destroys us. And if I'm in this wave on the ocean and I look over at you as a wave on the ocean, I can see the reflection of myself, and that's the only way I'll know who I am. I've been Bob Trask for 79 years, but I still don't know who he is. I've never heard this voice other than on a recording and banging around inside my head. I've never seen this face except on video or film. I've never experienced this personality. I really don't know who I am. Well, then what's the purpose? Well, then it must be for me to be present for you, and you be present for me. Then I can see who you are, and you can see who I am, and we can celebrate each other rather than trying to celebrate ourselves. And I think that's really what you were saying in the very beginning of our conversation when you said to have an ego but not be the ego.
Yes. Yeah, and that I think that's something I said to myself for many years. Some of us learn tough lessons. And we're getting cued for a break, so we'll be back for the last section with Bob Trask in just a couple of minutes.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Tune in to the Practical Intuitive, Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World with me, host Robin Fritz, Mondays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern. I'll cover personal and business intuition, animal communication, mediumship, space clearing, past life regression, shamanic insights, energy healing, soul choice, and more, all to help you tap your own intuitive and healing skills. No ifs, ands, or buts.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
Okay, so we're back and we're talking about aspects of forgiveness with Bob Trask. And something just occurred to me as we were waiting on the break here, Bob, is, talking about tools for forgiveness. And something came up for me. I have had clients that talk about perhaps they've been somewhere, something's happened to them, and they've had readings, or people say, oh, well, you're working off karma, or you this is happening to you because it's your karma. And I think we need to be really careful about how we see that, because we can keep ourselves, that can be a way of keeping ourselves away from loving ourselves and away from forgiving ourselves.
Thank you so much for saying that. It's one of the greatest misconceptions ever, this thing about karma. Karma, in the way that it's being touted by many in the world, is really no different than guilt, than having a debt that needs to be paid. You know, if I'm hiking along on a mountain trail and I come to a gorgeous placid lake that's reflecting the trees and the rock wall on the other side, and it's just in the sky and the clouds, it's just a beautiful, perfect mirror, and I pick up a rock and throw it into the lake, it splashes, it destroys that image. It's a sin. It created disruption in what was perfect. And if I watch for a few minutes, it'll completely heal itself. And everything in life is like that. We are not so grand that we can create a sin or do something that doesn't instantly, by the great creative power of Holy Spirit, get healed. We are not that powerful. And so what I see about karma is this. Each one of us as unique individuals have realms of genius in us, genius realms available to us, and we are like an unwoven tapestry, or we are like an easel pad that has not yet been touched by the paint. We have huge potential, and if we don't let ourselves be who we are, then we don't fulfill that potential, and we don't become whole, and we don't become as joyful as we could be. And so then we go around to some degree emotionally or spiritually crippled. That karma needs to be fulfilled. That identity of who we are needs to be fulfilled. So rather than seeing karma as an obligation, I think that, at least for me, I see it as an opportunity, that I have unlimited opportunity. And if I don't fulfill that opportunity, then I still must do that in another life or in another dimension, because I must become whole. I must become one with God. And the only way I can do that is for me to do what I'm here to do, to live my life's purpose, to find my purpose and live that purpose and express who I really am to the world. And have my mind open all the time to never say, oh, I know how this is and I know how that is. The truth is, I don't know how anything is. I'm just in flow. I'm in process.
Oh, that's a true statement. The more I learn, the less I know.
How true.
But it makes me laugh now, but I can remember being about 4 or 5 and thinking, okay, if I keep working this hard, by the time I'm 30, I'll know everything. I don't know what I was doing in my sleep, Bob, but I would wake up and I would be writing on the bed sheets. I would be writing furiously, like I was trying to gather the notes from my dreams that somebody was talking to me. And then I would wake up and say, oh no, I don't have it. And I had this insatiable need for for wisdom and growth, and well, okay, I'll just get to 30 and I'll know. And then I got to 30 and I went, I don't know anything.
Oh, it's so beautiful. That's so beautiful.
and now I just realize that when there's you're a few years ahead of me, and I know you're still humble and learning, and I think now I'm more comfortable with the fact that it's just always going to be that way.
It's true. I'm more a student now than I was 40 years ago when I began this spiritual work. I thought I had it pretty well handled back then, and now I know that I am like like in a river. And the river is a process, and it's changing, moving, growing all the time. And I need to be moving, changing, growing with it. I think our listeners, I know out there in the middle of America that many of our listeners are saying, my gosh, that's me. That's me. And I just want to say to you, if you're hearing that message, be gentle with yourself. This doesn't happen. This thing called enlightenment, it doesn't happen through effort. You cannot get there by trying to get there. You can only
so true.
get there by being, just being. Go for a walk in the forest, sit on the beach, read a good book, listen to music. But you must just be, and then the flower begins to open up inside of you. But if you try to force it, it's like if I plant carrots, and then I go back 2 weeks later and I dig them up to see how they're doing. That's trying. That's kind of what we do. We just need to trust the process, that we're okay.
Yeah, do not try, young Yoda, do.
How true. That's one of the great spiritual awakenings of Star Wars.
Yeah, and it's the thing is, it's so simple, the being, as opposed to the trying. And that was another thing that you taught us way back when was, there's a big difference between trying and doing. And boy, I had the trying part down back then. I was good at it. And
and trying is a form of resistance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and that's funny because I had that listed as I wonder if we'll talk about resistance, and we're 10 to the hour, and here we are, resistance. That's a big piece about forgiveness, and it just came organically with us, resistance to forgiveness. I don't know. Have any of us ever been there? I think everyone could put their hand up, right?
The lady I was mentioning, the sweet lady that's in the last week or so of her life, we talked earlier, and we were talking about the difference between having pain, because she has a lot of pain right now, the difference between having pain and having suffering. And the difference between pain and suffering very simply is that suffering comes from the resistance to the pain. But if I have pain, and I accept the pain, swallow it, enable it, allow it, welcome it, then it's just pain. It's just a physical sensation. But if I fight against it, if I resist it, if I push against it, then I suffer. And it's the same thing is true in emotional pain. If your husband or your wife has left you, or someone has died, or you're in some grief, to accept and to drink in that feeling and let it become one with you so that it may seep into your bones and make you wise. It won't kill you. It's there as a gift. But if you resist it, then it just keeps hammering at you, and you suffer, and you suffer, and you suffer.
And my husband and I, Brendan and I, were just talking about that this morning, about allowing, and we were, I was just saying to emotions, they're just like, you just allow them. I see them there. I don't become them. I say, okay, I see, I'm feeling this. If something's happened or somebody, I see that. Okay. I have compassion for it. And I just allow it because, I'm not like joy 24/7. I might hear that something's happened to somebody and go, oh, I wish I could change that. But then I realize everybody's got their lessons. Everybody's is the master of their life. And maybe I can just get up every day and come from a place of love and compassion. And that's the best I can do.
And gosh, that's so wise. Those are such wise words. And coming from you, who say to us, and I see you as very, very far along on the road to enlightenment, but for you to say humbly to us that you go through that is really good for me to hear, and I know it's good for our listeners to hear, because in fact we are in the river, and the river has all the different elements. There's a snag sticking out over there. There's rapids here. There's whitewater here. There's a whirlpool over there. But it's all the river. And all of the things that are going on, whether we like them or we don't like them, are a part of the river. And as soon as we surrender, we stop fighting the water, and it stops hammering us in the face, and we start going with it. And when you're going with the river, you no longer feel the force of the water. You just feel the joy of being.
Yes, surrender, the path of surrender. It's what I call what has been my life. I say it was a path of surrender and a path of compassion. Surrender cannot be underestimated.
No, indeed. And you've used the word compassion several times. Talk to us about that.
I think for me, to me, compassion and forgiveness are so intertwined. Maybe we're not having the best day and we head off somewhere and somebody cuts us off in traffic, and we go into the store and they're grumpy with us, and somebody just grabbed the last celery that we were going to get on sale, and these things are happening. If we're reacting to all of that, these are little things, but little things can take us out of that peace state of mind. And it's like, you know what? Have compassion that, one, I don't need to have all the answers, that it's all perfect the way it is. I think that there's something between forgiveness and compassion that is like we have to live it and walk it. And forgiveness is an everyday thing. If I don't find that these things upset me much. They did when I was younger. Things would just get me going, and it was a pattern thinking. But now I just say, okay, well, let's have compassion. That person was probably rude to me because they've got something going on. I don't know. Can I just stay in my place and my vibration of love and compassion? And lo and behold, they shift right in front of you. Or maybe they don't. And maybe they don't always, maybe you don't get to see it. But if you can come from that place of a loving, compassionate place, then you have affected them. They will feel better whether you see it or not.
Yes. The history is filled with stories. I know you've heard a lot of them and read a lot of them, of people who were on their way to commit suicide. Fully intended, today will be the last day of my life. I've got the gun, I've got the knife, I've got the rope, I've got the poison. I'm going to go do this. And then someone was nice to them. Somebody said, oh, excuse me, I didn't mean. No, it's all right. No, listen, you look really nice today, and can I help you with that? And the person later said, that turned the corner for me, and changed my life. I've heard that story so many times. And so one of the things that we know about those people who took the last celery, or the people who cut you off in the traffic, is this, and that's that troublesome people are people in trouble. Let me not be troublesome to them. Let me see if I can find those people who are in trouble and somehow zap them with love so that it changes them. A couple that I know really close to me, about 3 or 4 times a year, they go into a restaurant and they get a crabby waiter or waitress. And when they're through with the meal, they leave a $100 tip and a note saying, so much appreciated your kindness. And then they go out and watch back through the window and see what happens. And watch the transformation of that person going to other people with a smile, with a look of bewilderment, with a look of almost joyful shock that someone cared. And I met one of those people years later because she was in my family, and she said she never forgot that. It changed her life. For $100, I can change someone's life. For a smile, for here, let me help you with that. I know you stepped on my foot, but don't worry about it. I walk on them all the time. Here, let me help. To be able to do that with the compassion that you're teaching us right now, that makes us a part of of the solution rather than the part of the problem in the world.
Yeah. You know, I just was working. I was a man here in Colorado who had his trailer stolen and he's homeless. And a group of us mediums are trying to psychically locate it for him. And he said to me, I just feel so much better knowing that people care. And
yes.
I thought, oh, that's good. When I see that this hour has flown by, we have like 2 minutes left. I'm like, where did it go? We just got started. But
I know.
It has been such a pleasure to have you on the show. I just love talking to you. I'm grateful for the gifts that you shared with me and all of humanity. I know you've touched countless lives, and though maybe not knowing it at the time, many times I believe that our thoughts are so powerful that when we think of someone, what we send is important. So I always send you love, Bob Trask.
I send you love back, Cynthia Rose.
Yes. So thank you so much for being on the show. I'll look forward to connecting with you again.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, that's okay, Christopher. That song was fine. It was playing a little bit of possibilities, a little psychic there. Song from the CD. Okay, Bob, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for making time.
Thanks, love. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, all right, bye-bye.